Hello and welcome to the Sunday Guardian show by Joyeeta Basu. As you know, the election to the president of the United States has been completed. The results are out, and Donald Trump has become the president. Is in the president-elect right now, 47th president of the US. Who would have thought? Think of what happened, 4 years back in January 2020, and before that, that period between November and January. Cleo, and today I've got a very special guest to discuss about all that. Is Cleo Paskal, who is non-resident senior fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, and she is also a columnist with Sunday Guardian. Now, welcome, Cleo, to the show. So tell me, how has the transition been, from what we saw in 2020 to 2024 November? I think it is a huge difference. How did the pendulum swing for Donald Trump in such a major way in the last 4 years?
So I think actually this is something that we've covered in the Sunday Guardian. There was a real change in the Republican Party itself. And the mechanisms that controlled the party, the people that controlled the party, had a very different vision for the future of the party. That sort of the old Mitt Romney, Bush wing of the party wasn't really delivering what the people, it looks like now, wanted. And so it took a long process of regaining or gaining control of the party by what is now sort of the Trumplican wing of the party, the kind of Trump-light supporters of the party. It was described in a bunch of different ways. It was very focused. On Steve Bannon, for example, talked a lot about the precinct strategy, where people who were the sort that would support Trump would take over their party through the electoral process at the precinct level, into the school boards, and just rebuild the party from the ground up, because it was very, very much a top-down party. And that culminated in the 2022 midterms, where you saw people like J.D. Vance get elected by that wing of the party in their primaries, and then be able to compete against a Democratic rival for the elections, and many of them won. And as that momentum started to grow, there was even a major change at the RNC itself, with Ronna McDaniels, who's actually a relative of Mitt Romney, leaving her post as head, and Lara Trump, who's a relative of Donald Trump, coming in and taking effective control over things like which candidates are supported, where you run ads, where some of the campaigning is done. So it's not so much, I would say, a change generally in the U.S. population, although of course that was there, but a change in what the Republican Party decided they wanted to offer the people of the United States. And clearly over half of the U.S. voting public liked that change in direction. All this to say, if it was a different Republican candidate, I'm not sure that this outcome would be the same. And this is something to watch, what happens in the next 4 years, because of course, whatever happens, Donald Trump won't be on the ticket. So what happens to the shape of the Republican Party over the next 4 years, whether this Trumplican party survives, or whether the traditional Republicans try to regain control over their party, which would be very difficult at this point, but I'm sure they're going to try. There are a lot of money and old interests involved all around. Will tell us what's likely to happen in 4 years from now, whether we see probably a Vance running for the next president. I mean, he'd have to compete against others within the party, or whether you see it going back to a more traditional Republican Party.
But the fact of the matter is that it's the non-traditional part of the Republican Party that got the victory, isn't it?
Absolutely. And they would tell you that they are the traditional Republicans, that the Republicans of decades ago were this sort of Republican. And something happened, and it drifted over into a different direction. I mean, that's their story, is that the people who traditionally would vote Republican have finally taken back the Republican Party from the ground up. Now, if this precinct strategy continues, you'll see some pretty fundamental changes, I think, if it continues, at the state level, at the county level, on the school board level. So this transformation in parts of the country may not be over, because people were still, until fairly recently, people were still very shy, understandably, given the lawfare involved, for being open about how they felt about some of these issues. I think this will give more people of that ilk the courage to run themselves. So it's a top to bottom potential transformation of the Republican Party and of the sort of people who would support a Trump Republican Party. Elon Musk wouldn't have voted for Mitt Romney or Bush, but he's all in, as he said, for Trump. That's very indicative of the sort. Joe Rogan, same thing. So whether the Trump Republican Party, the Trumplican Party, continues and grows and expands, if it does, that's going to be a pretty fundamental change. There are a lot of people in different parts of the U.S. government, and the U.S. government is massive. So we're talking, DOD or Treasury or Commerce or whatever, who are political animals. They get their appointments come through being in favor with those who can promote them. So you may start to see some pretty big changes in who gets promoted and who doesn't. And if Elon Musk does get put in charge of the Department of Government Efficiency, the DOGE, as he likes to call it, we saw what he did at Twitter. He fired 70-80% of the staff and claims that he was more efficient because of it. So, this is not. We'll see what happens. And the other big factor at the time that we're recording this, we're not sure about the House, who wins the House, right? But we know that he won the Senate, that the Republicans won the Senate, and the Senate is what confirms appointments. So that's what confirms the ambassadors, for example. So like see if there's going to be a new ambassador to India, for example.
Stays or not.
Yeah. So
anyway, all he does is dance. Nothing more than that, actually, and lectures us.
So that gives an indication of how this is, as bits of the government, as bits of the U.S. government may start to change, things might start to be very different. Now, the ones who are benefiting from the system the way it is now aren't going to go quietly. And, they're smart and have a lot of money and have a lot invested. And as is always the case, because lawfare has now been invoked, there's probably concern that they personally may be prosecuted for some of their activities. So the stakes are incredibly high. So it's nothing is over until it's announced on the front pages of the Sunday Guardian as being over. But we'll see. Things are the pieces are in place for the potential for a very different United States of America, from the school board level to IndoPACOM to State Department. But it may not, we don't know what's going to happen. The pieces are there, but that doesn't mean that they're going to move into place.
Yeah, because that was what, in fact, I was going to ask you about. What about the kind of quote unquote resistance that is going to come from within, and especially the State Department? Will it continue to be as bad as it is right now?
So I'm going to pretend to be a bit more objective than that. but as we know,
no.
Actually, Joyeeta, to be fair, I think you can say that there have been some very serious problems with the State Department. I mean, I think it is being objective to say,
as Indians, we know.
Yeah, that's right. As a Canadian visiting the U.S. And who has to go through the border regularly, I'm a little bit more.
I know they are the ones who are. I know I can understand. Yeah, even then, I mean,
Yeah, but there are a lot of good people, and I'm not saying this to to I truly mean it. There are good people in the State Department, um, and they've been working very quietly around things like you know trying to ensure that uh, things don't fall apart. And we know, of course, that in India, the file has been kept mostly with DoD rather than State Department. I think it, the Diwali tweet from President-elect Trump, was a big indicator we're going to decide this from the top. I'm paying attention. Somebody in his group is paying attention. I don't like the activities that have been going on. And not only is that going to be a shift for the State Department, but I'm very sure Ottawa was paying close attention also. And if not, they should be. This is we'll see how the Canadian government acts from now on, but I don't think a Trump administration is going to be playing the sort of games that we've seen being played, and that and Canada is going to have a real problem if it tries to continue to push some of these, or allow some of these Khalistani, Wahhabi, Sino elements affect the foreign policy, not just of Canada, but leach into the Five Eyes. You have, a very hard-nosed group of people coming in Washington. They're battle worn now. They've people have been thrown in jail. There's been a lot of lawfare. I mean, Trump can be sentenced to prison on the 16th of November. These cases haven't gone away. So I don't, and that's not that's a group of people that understands, especially people like JD Vance, how important India is, and in many different ways. And they're going to want to make sure that State Department, at least at the top level, because the middle and lower levels can really mess things up just by slowing
yeah,
down visas or things like that. But at the top level, that it's aligned with their vision for how global security should be. And I just like to it's interesting. I'm just reflecting on my own reactions here. When it came up to, I mean, there is still a fear of criticizing parts of the U.S. government. I mean, I just felt it in myself, right? That is still it's a operational reality for people in the U. I mean, Americans, let alone of people who are dealing with the U.S. The last 4 years has seen a use of state power that is was quite surprising in Canada as well. I mean, the invocation of the Emergency Measures Act during the truckers' protest, for example. I mean, that if you remember, the seizing of bank accounts of the truckers, right?
yes,
Like there is a whole period where that kind of behavior was normalized at the government level, and things can change very quickly in either direction. So it'll be interesting to see whether those mechanisms start to get dismantled. I mean, how can I put it? I wonder whether if there had been a Trump administration in the U.S., whether Canada would have invoked the War Measures Act for the truckers, right? So
right.
we'll see whether that sort of dynamic gets fundamentally changed, or whether those tools, now that they've been taken out of the toolkit, continue to be used. It's a deeper, at a deeper level, the role of the relationship between the individual and the state changed a lot in the last 4 years. COVID opened the door for it, but then it was used in other ways afterwards. So will the State Department improve its behavior? I think, especially now that they've got the Senate, which means they can do their confirmations, definitely at the top level, it will improve in its relationship with India, 100%. In its relationship with Canada might deteriorate somewhat. So we'll see. But I think it will become, State Department and DOD will become more aligned with the strategic goals of the Trump administration.
And what about bodies like USCIRF, that because that is what has been really, really coming after us. I mean, saying that we should be sanctioned and we should be put in terms of religious freedom, we should be sanctioned and blacklisted like Pakistan and China and all, which is ridiculous. But the thing is, so what do you think? Will these bodies be reformed? And especially if I can see it in terms of, say, lobbying by countries like Pakistan and all, and we are told that there is always a Chinese hand behind nowadays. I mean, and in fact, I was speaking with somebody else yesterday, and that person was saying from Washington that, there is too much Pakistani influence that is there at certain levels of the administration. What do we do with this? I mean, how is it that, a basket case like Pakistan, a terrorist sponsor, still have so much influence? We know for certain in USCIRF they have, but even in the administration we are told. So what exactly is going on?
Pakistani intelligence is good at what they do. Yeah, they've spent a lot of time and a lot of money trying to get people in place. There's also there are a few different things going on. There are a lot of political appointees, obviously, thousands of them, and then some of them get hired into the bureaucracy, and then sort of disappear into the bureaucracy. And you have people like, you had this guy who was effectively an Iranian agent who brought in a woman who was also an Iranian agent who is still working at the Department of Defense, right?
Yes, the one.
So I mean, and
about releasing that letter.
Yeah, and if I know that. Right. I mean, I have no special knowledge, right? So if I know that, then can you imagine what somebody who can do background check on her actually knows about her, right? I mean, I could be wrong. It could be totally, but she hasn't sued anybody yet who's accused her of that kind of stuff, which is usually an indication that, you got it wrong. So I think that the political appointees are definitely gone. I mean, that's, they've been working on this for a long time, putting together lists. Now, my bigger concern on the India front is not so much that you'll get people who are focused anti-India, but you'll get people who just don't know anything about India, which is, and so that's an education process. But if the demand signal from the top is we want a good relationship with India, and the political appointees want to keep their jobs, then they're going to make sure that there's a good relationship with India. And on that front, it's difficult to underestimate the importance of that Diwali tweet. He said he used the words, Hindus are being attacked, and he called it out, and he didn't like what was going on. So that narrative, I mean, it's obviously was what was happening, but within the administration, there is an acknowledgement of, Hindus can be victims too, that you don't, and so that's
if I can point out a little thing, I have got to know how that happened, by the way. I'll tell you separately some other time, not publicly, but yeah, I did get some inputs about that. Now, please continue.
So you don't
wonder what happened.
Well, we don't. So is there anything about that that changes what I think about that tweet, the importance of that tweet? Because that's important for the viewers to know whether I'm wrong about that, whether I'm reading too much into it. Am I reading too much into it?
No, you are not. No, you are not, because I think a lot of, people went and met him and convinced him, and he did that. And it was, I think, the greatness of his heart and that he did it. But yeah, obviously that's not his focus area. But people told him that this is happening. In fact, and I think Trump does not like Mohammad Yunus at all anyway, because he had some time back written about Mohammad Yunus, before that is the microfinance man who, I think, who tried to defeat me by pouring his money into Hillary's campaign or something like that. So there is that history already there. So I think Mr. Yunus should be a little more careful about how the minorities in Bangladesh are particularly treated. Because you see, right now, again, the violence has started escalating.
Yeah, and this is so I'm particularly worried about the time between now and inauguration. Because bad actors have until January to do what they want to do, right? And then in January, the administration comes in January, so they know what's going to happen in January. So there's just a few months now for shenanigans, and that's also true on the Chinese side, or Chinese using proxies. Problem is more likely. So this is a very dangerous few months, this transition period, and if you think about it, President Biden is still president.
Yep.
Right. So Kamala Harris she's vice president, but she's out of the picture. So the commander in chief of the United States of America's military is Joe Biden until January. So I don't know where decisions are being made in that.
But can he take major policy decisions in these 2 months?
He's the president.
Okay.
Yeah.
With full power.
I think, with full power, and more to the point, because I don't know how day to day involved he is in policy making. So more to the point, the people around him who may have been the ones making some major decisions, and who aren't as visible, also have the same powers that they had before. Right. And they're leaving government. They know they're leaving government under any circumstance. They wouldn't have. Most of his people were not going to be in a Harris administration anyway. So they're setting themselves up for their retirement or the next phase of their employment or whatever it is. Right. So this is a very. There'll be more visibility because there is a transition that's going on. But there is only one president of the United States at a time, and the president of the United States is the commander in chief, and that's it. So and if you take a look at it from Mohammad Yunus's point of view, for example, he made he went to New York and he did a big event at the Clinton Foundation, right, recently. That was not a politically smart move, apart from anything else. And if I hadn't seen that comment from President Trump, but we know that people like Chuck Grassley were asking about his relationship with the Clinton Foundation back in 2016, publicly, right? There was that congressional letter. So you're him.
Yeah.
You've got a change in administration coming up in January. What are you going to do over the next 2 months to try to ensure your future?
And what about specifically in terms of the terrorism that is coming from Pakistan? Because I remember the last time when Trump was president, he was the one who first said that we are going to cut aid because of this, Pakistan is a font of terrorism, too much terrorist activities are going on. Given that, Trump is also seen as a transactional leader. So how can Pakistan wriggle out of a situation? It has already wriggled out of that gray list that it had gone into FATF. So will Trump be as lenient towards Pakistan as Joe Biden was, or will he be a little tough?
So for me, a lot of it comes down to India. It used to come down to India and Afghanistan. The argument was more recently, we need Pakistan because of Afghanistan. And now, I mean, it used to be before that, obviously China or, sometimes India. But what is Pakistan's leverage now? Because the U.S. is out of Afghanistan. Trump's position on China is much more clear, and I'm hoping that tweet, it was, obviously about humans suffering, but I hope it was also about understanding that rebuilding the relationship with India is fundamentally important, at a deeper level, because that will trigger some more of the transactional, if that is indeed how he approaches things. If it is, you get much more out of transactions with India than you do with, Pakistan yeah. So I don't see an increase in what Pakistan has to offer. It'll present itself as, we'll help you also with your China thing, and we'll, help you with this and that or whatever. But can it do more so than India? I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I haven't. What we're waiting for now is to see who the actual appointees are.
Right.
Who's that, right? Who the actual people are, because that's we can get a sense of the large shape of the direction of this, but India had people like Pompeo last time, an Esper, who really wanted to get some of those defense deals done. The 2+2s were very high level. I mean, they were coming out to India in October 2020, before the vote, during COVID, to try to get those deals signed. We'll see whether the new group of people has that level of priority for India. There are a huge number of domestic issues, and it may be more packed with domestic people. I don't like Elon Musk, for example. He's great on government efficiency, but he still does business in China, right? So we'll see what roles people get. Trump has said, for example, that Robert Kennedy Jr. Is great on the health stuff, but he's keeping them away from oil and gas.
Oil and gas. He mentioned that in his speech.
Yeah. So it's going to be, I think, a very unusual cabinet of people, or people who aren't necessarily politicians. And so he will attempt, I think the goal is to box them into certain areas. But people like Elon Musk are not easily boxed. We'll see. Yeah. So the point is, on the India front, we'll have to see who the individuals are, what positions they're put in, how much power they're put in, and whether they actually can be reined in. But I think there are going to be a lot of Indians in DC sitting around trying to explain what India is to a lot of people who haven't really thought about India before.
So tell me, of course, we are nearing the end of our conversation. What about the Indo-Pacific, China, Taiwan, and the Pacific Islands, which you specialize in? So let's hear about it a bit. Which way is Trump going to go?
So the previous Trump administration was the first administration to put somebody dedicated to the Pacific Islands on the National Security Council. And they renamed Pacific Command Indo-Pacific Command. And people like Pompeo have gone on the record about about Taiwan should be recognized as a country. So again, we'll see who gets in, but there have been a lot of indications that and we've seen that Trump is not afraid to do big moves like moving the capital to Jerusalem.
Yes.
Yeah.
In fact, Israel is also another area. Israel, Iran.
Yeah. So we'll see. But it hasn't been a conversation. You've been very kindly asking me questions. So let me ask you one, because you've been talking to a lot of different people. So what from an Indian perspective, what are your concerns? I mean, we know that there's some hope in certain areas, but what are your concerns?
I think in terms of concerns, I think right now the relationship, the US-India relationship seems to have been a little derailed because of this Pannoon thing, and because there is a feeling that is increasingly growing in India. I would say that the so-called US deep state, I don't even know whether it actually exists or not, or whether it's a conspiracy theory, but the so-called deep state is trying to destabilize the government here. Okay, and they want, there is some speculation whether they want Mr. Modi out or not. But the thing is that they're weaponizing. I think the problem that has happened with the Biden's relationship with India and vice versa is that, and that is not just I am saying, too many people, a lot of them are saying, the weaponization of almost everything that has taken place in this administration, even though at the level of the leadership, it has been pretty good. But it seems in the last few months, ever since Kamala Harris has been declared as the presidential candidate, and frankly, Mr. Biden has become some kind of a lame duck president, what has happened is that I think the people surrounding him, he is no longer in a position to make decisions. So the people surrounding him, I mean, in fact, I might as well say, I was just speaking with Grant Nisham, and he was saying that, the problem is right from Obama's time to Biden's time and all, there are certain people who are very anti-Modi. So that aspect, especially when it comes to state and all, I think that is coming in. So even though the relationship with the Defense Department has been okay, but I think there are problems. So I guess all of us are hoping that those problems will be ironed out. And this nonsense that is going on about Pannoon, who is a declared terrorist by India, who is going around threatening to shoot Indian planes down, who is threatening to assassinate the Prime Minister, blow up Parliament. Here he is sitting and doing all these things in the US and Canada. Nobody takes care of anything. And then you are sanctioning our people. They have sanctioned some companies because some stuff was sent to Russia. And then, this constant hectoring note, this constant threat that comes up from all those puny little State Department spokespeople, that really is riling up people here. And the problem is they don't understand one thing. Either they were doing it deliberately. They are planting, say, for example, certain question, people who will be asking questions, for example, there will be certain specific people. One of them is from Bangladesh. So they will be asking certain questions. So the State Department will come up with a statement which can be construed as anti-India also. So they have been playing these little games. And what happens is, you see, after all, India is a democracy. So a lot of people are in fact wondering that, if the public opinion turns against the US, what happens? Number one, and this whole move about this quote-unquote normalization, which perhaps with China along the LAC, which perhaps would have happened even otherwise. So some people are already putting two and two together and saying it is because he is getting a pushback from the US that this normalization is happening, which is, I don't think, the case. Because you see, the talk has been going on. So you see, yes, there are problems, there are niggling doubts and all. Let us hope with because I tell you, this is so-called values-based foreign policy that Mr. Biden has kind of taken up. I mean, that's the biggest hypocritical thing possible. But that, I would say, has been weaponized. So that is the problem with the Biden administration. Too much of weaponization has happened of almost every single thing.
Thank you. That's very helpful. All right. Well, let's
Yeah.
fingers
So
crossed for the next few months.
yeah, you are there, you are in Washington, you are in a position, you are talking to people and all. So I think these are the messages you, yeah, it's okay, it's all right. Everyone knows, Cleo, everyone knows. So yeah, I think the government there needs to know these things. Simple as
Yes,
that.
they do. They do. And India has been you've been talking to a lot of Americans, and NewsX has, and what would be nice is to see if more American networks get on more Indians to talk about the situation, so that the information flow is a little bit more two-way. That would be very helpful. Yeah.
Fine, fine. I think I spoke more than you did, I think, for sure.
No. It's that's the way, frankly, it should be. So I'm glad for it, and I look forward to catching up again soon.
Yes, soon. You should come over to India ASAP.
Are you letting Canadians in?
I hope so. I hope so. I think so.
I'm soon going to have like no foreign ministry that wants me anywhere near them. So.
No, I think you still have your visa, I think. So I think it's okay. Nice. Okay. I mean, sorry, viewers. This is what happens whenever Cleo and I start talking. We talk about everything.
I look forward to seeing you again soon, and and having some actual proper idlis
and Dilliard.
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you, Cleo, for being on the show. We will catch up again, and thank you, viewers, for watching. Until the next time.